The Atrium Health MLK Junior Holiday Celebration has been brought to you by our partners, Food Lion, City of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County Parks and Recreation, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Community Relations. This is a WBTV special presentation. The Atrium Health MLK Junior Holiday Celebration.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
From the mountaintop to your child's classroom.
He knew what he was fighting for, and he knew what he was putting at risk to get there.
The words of Dr. King still resonate.
I would do it for my grandchildren, but I do it for my soul.
They guide our leaders.
And I remember something that Dr. King said, and he said, you know, the time is always right to do the right thing.
And I feel that we continue to go back to his message.
And they lay the foundation
No justice, no peace.
for those still demanding change.
It gives me hope. It gives me hope to know that, you know, there is something that we can do that can evoke change.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dedrick Russell.
And I'm Steve Crump. If there is one place that pays tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. in the Queen City, it's a statue along 3rd Street near McDowell, right in the heart of Marshall Park. Now, that sculpture was dated back in 1980. It was the tireless deeds of those serving in public office, as well as individuals in the private sector who helped raise money for the work of art.
Over the next hour, we will explain the impact Dr. King had, show you the local organizations working to keep his work relevant, and hear from students in their very own words about how his values are shaping their very own lives.
Well, as many of you know, we lost Dr. King at age 39. The window of time he worked in lasted some 13 years. It started in 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycotts. He attracted hundreds of thousands for the 1963 March on Washington. He lived only another 5 years before losing his life to an assassin's bullet during the Memphis sanitation worker strike. Throughout the national datelines and headlines, he managed to find time right here in the Carolinas and was supposed to be in Charlotte on the day that his life ended in April of 1968. Well-publicized calls for action were delivered in places like Alabama, as well as our nation's capital. But early on in his civil rights journey, Dr. Martin Luther King's passion for change was also delivered here in the Carolinas.
I don't decide what is right or wrong by going around taking a kind of Gallup poll of what people think.
Back in 2015, we located the missing footage from his 1960s visit to Charlotte's Park Center. Historic images on that day were captured by the late James Peeler, and one of the topics Dr. King discussed focused on leadership.
Ultimately, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus.
It was not his first visit to the Tar Heel State. 2 years earlier, King sat down with students at Greensboro's Bennett College during 1958, which began his relationship with North Carolina HBCUs. He would make other trips to the Queen City and, in 1966, deliver a speech at Charlotte's Johnson C. Smith University.
I tried to speak to him after his speech, but they wouldn't let me through. And so I just yelled out, "Martin!" And he said, "Oh, come on over and speak to me." And he was, of course, very cordial.
Gene Brayboy and Dr. King first met as students at Boston University before his efforts influenced the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 10 years earlier, while assisting Rosa Parks during the Montgomery bus boycotts, he enlisted the help of former CMS instructor Maud Ballou as his secretary. She was mentioned in his first book, Stride Toward Freedom.
We were down so long, there was no place to go but up, so we stayed together and we worked together.
The date, April 4th, 1968, is etched into the American landscape. Hours before the fatal shots that ended his life were fired outside of the Lorraine Motel, King had planned to be in Charlotte, but chose to stay in Memphis to assist striking sanitation workers.
We made contact with Dr. King about 12:30.
The telegram postponing the trip sent to local activist Reginald Hawkins remains in the special collection section of the library at UNC Charlotte.
I talked with him about 12:30 or 1 o'clock that day, and 6 o'clock that afternoon he was dead.
Demonstrations immediately came after his death in the streets of the Queen City as a sign of unity.
For this gathering this morning here on the steps of the courthouse, prove that it can be done.
Honoring his legacy has resulted in this community carrying out events including parades and prayer breakfast. Those who knew him and his commitment during the formative years have had great expectations from a man they simply called Martin.
We never had any idea, but in our group, we always thought he would do something special. We really did.
It's easy to see that Dr. King was connected locally. His voice made a big difference in our community.
His efforts moved hearts and changed laws, but more than that, Dr. King's actions fueled and inspired a national debate connected to race in America.
That's right, but more than 50 years after his death, how has that changed? As WBTV's Alex Giles discovered, civil rights in the 21st century go beyond the issues of black and white.
Charlotte Black Pride, it's basically an organization that caters to our black LGBTQ plus community. We provide, a safe space and also promote, just being yourself and just social change to help represent and help bring about equality.
We have to talk about the significance of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Absolutely.
What does Dr. King mean to you?
Dr. King, to me, means everything. Without his leadership, without his legacy, I probably wouldn't be standing here, talking with you now in this interview. It gives me hope. It gives me hope to know that, there is something that we can do that can invoke change. It lets me know that, my community work, to bring about social change and to eradicate the injustices, are not in vain. He did it, he led a movement, him and those that march with him, led a movement, that tells me that it's possible to bring about equality.
Do people in the LGBTQ plus community still face discrimination today?
Absolutely. When it comes to especially trans people, trans and non-binary people, because when it comes to jobs, you are looked at different. The color of your skin is looked at, your how you identify is looked at. So yes, LGBTQ plus people face discrimination almost on a daily basis. I know some people that do.
If you don't mind me asking, have you ever faced discrimination before?
I have faced discrimination before, and actually was just something as simple as going into a restaurant and, waiting to be seated, and you notice, several other people come in after you and they're seated first. So yes, I have, faced racial discrimination before.
How do you think as a society we can change that?
Overall, it's about education. It's about educating our people, and it's also about getting to know people. A lot of times we judge people just from what we see before we even talk to them. We have a preconceived notion about who this person is and how they're going to be, towards society, towards you, towards the community. But what I've found, throughout being in Charlotte and throughout being a part of Charlotte Black Pride is, get to know people, talk with them, because what you thought or what somebody may have said about them could be completely different from actually who they are. So I feel like, just educating people about, what actually is happening, the things that we are going through where we feel less than or where we feel that we are discriminated against, and just getting to know people. If you're a different person from me and I don't talk with you and try to understand you, then I'll never know what you're about, and I'll always have a preconceived notion. I just want everyone, during this season and during the time that we are celebrating, Dr. King, to just look inside yourself and see what it is that you may be able to do to help invoke change in your community.
There are people in our community working to keep Dr. King's dream alive. They're being honored for it. We are introducing you to Charlotte's MLK Jr. Award winners. First, the Growing the Dream Award. It goes to two people. It's meant to recognize someone who has worked to foster university and promote diversity in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. This year, one of the awards goes to Dr. David Jacobs.
There are so many other people that are deserving of this. I really mean that. There are so many people who are, as we talked about, blooming where they're planted. So we're all planted in specific areas for specific reasons. And we don't necessarily know what those reasons are, but I think we all have the opportunity to influence our circle of co-workers, providers, families, friends. No one's asking you to go out and change the world. But if everybody takes that to heart and says, I'm going to make a difference in my little corner of the world, then we will all be moving forward.
Coming up on the Atrium Health MLK Jr. Holiday Celebration.
I learned that the only way to get over that is to do it and to listen and to not want to just get your point heard.
A one-on-one conversation with Atrium Health about what they're doing to promote diversity.
Plus,
I need to do something in my life to help other people because it's not just about me.
How our future leaders plan to honor Dr. King's legacy.
And if you want to watch and see more, we have extended versions of all these conversations up on our web streaming app. Just search WBTV in your Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV app to download.
As we go to break, a look back to Charlotte's MLK Jr. Parade in 2013. Welcome back to the Atrium Health MLK Jr. Holiday Celebration. In many respects, the goal of Dr. King was to level the playing field. Seeking equality was an exercise that engaged and involved countless foot soldiers, but it also involved the support from business entities.
Now that work has continued well into the 21st century. Jamie Bowl recently discovered a major initiative carried out by one of our corporate leaders, Charlotte-based Atrium Health.
Dr. Dunn, I appreciate you making time to talk to us. What does Martin Luther King Jr. Day mean to you?
Martin Luther King Day means a lot to me. I had the fortunate pleasure of serving on the Martin Luther King Center Board of Advisors in Atlanta. So I'm very close and personal with the family. I understand the mission. Martin Luther King himself, he taught us humility, service. He's the voice for the voiceless, or he was the voice for the voiceless, and social justice for all. So I really think that he will go down, or is one of the greatest leaders ever. It's unfortunate, though, that 60 years later, we're still grappling with some of those issues.
How do you explain his legacy, you know, and how his words and what he tried to remind us all still lives and is still necessary today?
It's still necessary. Right now, the past year, 2 years, we've been focused on diversity more than we've ever had in this country, in my 54 years on this earth. And I feel that we continue to go back to his message. We still remember that I have a dream. We go back to that there should be no person left unharmed, or not unharmed, but just no person left along the way, the sideway, food, nutrition, all of those things he fought for. And that's what we do here at Atrium Health. That is why I love the mission of Atrium Health and our For All strategy, that we say we want everyone. We want all patients to feel comfortable here, regardless of your ability to pay.
Talk a little more about that. So what has Atrium done, you know, in our community to promote equality and inclusion?
Yeah, we've done a lot. We are here for everyone, and we want to promote and hire and engage with all parts of our community. Now, with the Atrium Health, I think every single day we're doing hundreds of things as it relates to equity and inclusion. A couple that I would bring to mind is during the pandemic. Before the vaccine, we were focused on patients and treatment and testing. During that time, we realized that the African American and Latinx communities were not getting tested at the same rate as the general community. So we partnered with churches, pastors, local nonprofits. We created a synergy team that helped successfully close that testing gap. We're very proud of that. During that also time, if you remember 2 years ago, during the George Floyd and other killings, it was a really sad time in the country, but we were all trying to get through it and needed to heal and learn. So we created what we call courageous conversations. And during that time, I could not be more proud to work for Gene Woods, our president and CEO, because as a person of color, I learned a lot. He brought himself as the CEO. He shared stories of how he's been impacted by racism. And for the first time, some of the stories that I've never shared in my history, I shared. And so it was being very vulnerable and authentic and transparent at work.
How hard is it to get people to let themselves be vulnerable, to be able to talk about these things honestly?
It's hard. I will say it is hard work. And I learned that the only way to get over that is to do it and to listen and to not want to just get your point heard, but to learn the different perspectives.
You mentioned this a little bit, but let me ask you this way too. How does Atrium promote diversity within its own team and the system itself?
A program that's near and dear to me is our Restorative Pathways program. It is a program for recently incarcerated individuals, and as we know, a lot of organizations, they do not want to hire someone with a criminal record. But we believe everyone deserves a second chance, and so that Restorative Pathways program allows people to come in and build careers in healthcare, and that's the Second Chance program. That right there is diversity.
It's a basic question, but explain it to the community. Why are these efforts so important?
It's important because it is our mission. I can't go back to it enough. The 4All mission is to be here for everyone, not just our patients, but also to attract people who want to work here.
Is there a hurdle still in the way to get to where we want to get to really tackle this and deal with this equity and inclusion, issue that we're also talking about?
Well, you have to begin somewhere. There are hurdles in the way because we are human, and people need to learn along the way, and we need to keep to the commitments that we've made.
How encouraged are you? We're going to get there to Dr. King's vision.
I'm encouraged. I'm very encouraged. I believe that, again, what we're doing in this Charlotte community, I personally have never seen any place I've worked.
And if you want to watch and see more, we have extended versions of all these conversations up on our WBTV streaming app. Just search WBTV in your Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV App Store to download. Coming up on the Atrium Health MLK Jr. Holiday Celebration.
I think Dr. King would be saying to us, what have you not gotten done? What's needed to be done, and how are you doing it? How are you going to get it done?
A conversation with our Black leaders.
Plus, Charlotte has been home to the Southeast's largest celebration for Martin Luther King Day.
It just seems like we needed to do more, and so we started adding bands, and then we added floats.
How it has evolved over the decades.
Welcome back to the Atrium Health MLK Jr. Holiday Celebration. We continue to honor those who have been keeping Dr. King's dream alive here in Charlotte. Our next winner is also being honored with the Growing the Dream Award, Ashani Hadia Smith.
Well, the award, for starters, is an incredibly big honor to be nominated for, and I'm really grateful that I was able to get it for the year of 2022. And it means to me kind of just showing this younger generation that I'm so happy to be working with, what is possible outside of, I feel like being in the arts and being in theater kind of like makes you feel like you're in just one bubble, but showing you all the different things that are possible and how impactful a career in the arts, a career in theater and music, whatever you want to do, how that can take you further and how that can open different avenues for people of the upcoming generation.
And if you want to watch and see more of these award winners, we have extended versions of all of these conversations up on our WBTV streaming app. Just search WBTV in your Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV App Store to download. Coming up on the Atrium Health MLK Jr. Holiday Celebration, challenges over some of the very things Dr. King fought for.
And here we find ourselves in 2021 fighting the same fights that we fought 50 years ago.
How far have we come, and where do we stand?
Plus, a conversation with our county leaders.
Not only is his dream still alive, but he still speaks to us.
As we go to break, we take a look back to Charlotte's wreath laying in 2013.
We shall overcome.